It is Campus to Canton presents Coast to Coast. We're coming for you live. Week 12 is finishing up. It has truly been a chaotic season. The playoff race is shaping into its final form. Oregon goes down at Utah. Sparty is absolutely demolished today in Columbus, and Bryce Young goes berserk. But before we get into any of that, we need you guys to jump in the chat. Hit that subscribe button. Let us know what performances you were most impressed by today. But we start week 12 the same way we start every week with the rundown. Let's jump right into it with Iowa State at Oklahoma. Don't let this score fool you. This was an offensive struggle largely after scoring a 74-yard run. Scoring on a 74-yard run, Caleb Williams finished just 8 for 18 through the air, even considering that 74-yard run. He only had 67 yards on the ground, obviously, because college football considers sacks. OU continues to emphasize the deep passing game, these long developing plays. I complained about it last week on Coast to Coast against Baylor. They did the same thing today. Caleb Williams is holding on to the ball entirely too long. They do not move with the pocket. They do not utilize enough read option or quarterback power, in my opinion. Those runs that change the math in your favor, given the quarterback isn't a negative when you're considering blocking assignments. So OU won the game, but I do not understand Lincoln Riley's game plan for Caleb Williams. He is calling a Spencer Rattler playbook. He's calling Spencer Rattler plays for Caleb Williams. That is something that eventually is going to need to get corrected so that you can utilize Caleb Williams' mobility intentionally. Oftentimes when he's running, he is doing it because the play breaks down. These are not designed runs. You didn't get anything from Marvin Mims. Mario Williams scored, but you didn't get a lot from him. Jadon Hazelwood, Mike Woods, not to mention Eric Gray, who is an absolute afterthought in this offense. Kennedy Brooks was good. They ran for over 200 yards today, but with an OU offense, you expect to see points, them lighting up the scoreboard. They haven't done that since the bye week, and that's just it's problematic for Oklahoma. Let's go over to Iowa State. Brock Purdy was ineffective early, and he would end up being pulled for Hunter Deckers, who immediately led a touchdown drive. Purdy would end up finishing 30 for 43 for 281 yards, 1 touchdown, 1 interception. I think he is a future NFL backup. Let's also note that that's the second time in a big spot that Brock Purdy has been pulled for Hunter Deckers. He was pulled earlier in the season when Iowa State played Iowa, and Iowa State's offense was ineffective. Breece Hall, 19 for 58 on the ground. I think Breece Hall is what he is at this point. I wouldn't be surprised if we saw Breece Hall skip the bowl game. They're not playing for the playoffs. Injury could just really hurt him. He is a day 2 draft pick in all likelihood. Charlie Kohler catches fire late, 12 for 152 and 1. I think OU had some blown coverages because he was finding himself. He made some tough catches, but he was also finding himself wide open, including on a late 4th down. I think that now's the time to sell Charlie Kohler if you have him in C2Cs. I don't think he's a NFL tight end at all. All right, let's move on here to Arkansas at Alabama. This was a really good game with some good performances, starting with, of course, Bryce Young. And we are running out of superlatives for Bryce Young, who threw for over 500 yards today, almost 600, 559, 5 touchdowns. No interceptions. Unfortunately, he had that 6 for -11 on the ground. The spreadsheet simps are going to be on him. But he is absolutely the quarterback 1 in Debbie in Campus to Canton. Very talented player, and I think the Russell Wilson comparisons are spot on. He just has cat-like reflexes when the pressure is bearing down on him in the pocket. Jameson Williams, the transfer, goes for he had 3 touchdowns today. Was continuing to get behind the defense on slants, on deep routes. Jameson Williams is headed straight for first-round draft capital. Alan True said he ran a 10.6 100-meter dash in high school. That's pretty damn fast, and if he's improved on that, he could be a sub-4.4 guy. NFL teams are going to like that speed. Let's talk a little bit about Treylon Burks. Treylon Burks had himself a game today. 150 yards receiving, a couple of touchdowns, was also playing hurt. I think that this game definitely boosted his stock. It was a great, if you have 2022 draft picks in dynasty leagues, today was a great day for those picks. Not necessarily for the running backs, but for the wide receivers. When you consider Garrett Wilson and Chris Olave and Treylon Burks and Jameson Williams. Those players had excellent days today. So if you have 2022 draft picks, you saw their stock increase today. So good day for 2022 draft picks. Matt Bruning, let's bring you in here. Ohio State took down one side of Michigan today, taking down Sparty. That was an absolute shellacking. I mean, talk about quarterback performances. Bryce Young had a day today. CJ Stroud had a day today.
Yeah, I guess I should start off with the apology I posted on Twitter as well. I mean, I've been critical of CJ Stroud, and he is apparently he's a fan of W Debate. He's a fan of Coast to Coast because he takes what I say to heart, and he goes out there to give me the middle finger just about every Saturday that he plays. He had an amazing game. Let's start, though, with Michigan State, who I've got to give you credit. You said this morning to sit Kenneth Walker. You did not think he was going to be good. I said that was wrong. I mean, my God, 25 yards. That defense, they're better than I thought they were going to be. I mean, there was a lot of talk on the broadcast that they were holding Walker back a little bit because he had the 30-plus carries. Walker kind of came out and said that was not an issue. I don't know what the thing was. They really didn't seem to get him going. They were using the back of Simmons a lot. Peyton Thorne couldn't do anything either in this one, just 158 yards and 1 touchdown. But you mentioned C.J. Stroud. 432 yards and 6 touchdowns, most of that coming in the first half. I think he locked up the Heisman today. I mean, I don't think it's going to come down to him and Bryce Young. I mean, Bryce Young, as you mentioned, had a really good game. But I don't know that they beat Georgia in the SEC championship game, where I don't know that Wisconsin, who's likely the winner on the other side of the Big Ten, puts up much of a struggle here or causes the Buckeyes to struggle. And if Stroud goes out there, performs well, he's going to end up winning it. Henderson shut down, but not a great game here, just 63 yards on the ground. But how about these wide receivers who are really helping C.J. Stroud out? JSN, 105 yards and a touchdown. Garrett Wilson, 226. And congratulations to Chris Olave, setting the all-time touchdown record at the Ohio State. He got 2 today, jumps over David Boston. He's likely going to get a couple more before this season's over. And Boston, I don't know exactly how long, but he held that record for quite a while. So congratulations to Chris Olave getting that, especially after, what was that? Was it last year? 2 years ago? The big play that a lot of people held against him as Buckeyes fans, where he ran the wrong route and caused Justin Simmons, or not Justin Simmons, was it Justin Simmons? To get that, the Clemson linebacker / defensive back to get the interception in the end zone because he ran the wrong route when Fields threw it into the end zone, causing the Buckeyes to lose that game and possibly go on to more than likely lose to LSU in the championship game. But still, a lot of people held that against him. He came back again, and he's really done a good job.
David Boston famously owned by Charles Woodson in 1998. Let's move on here to SMU in Cincinnati. We thought that this could be a trap spot for Cincinnati. SMU's offense has been very, very good, but Cincinnati was just overpowering today.
Yeah, I mean, some people thought it was going to be a trap spot. Not your boy, Matty B here, who's probably the biggest Cincinnati fan in the world at this point, because I just can't get enough fighting with Twitter trolls that they deserve to be in the playoffs. Tanner Mordecai, our guy, Mike Valeri, FF Dirty Birds, Mike, I think is what his Twitter is, was kind of like hosting and hoping Tanner Boycott could get in that Heisman race. Throwing for 66 yards ain't going to get you there. That way, he was really shut down by Cincinnati here. That defense, I mean, they were swarming all over the place. It's like they were reading all the headlines that they didn't deserve to be in the playoffs, and they finally came out. They shut everybody down. I mean, Sigers just 64 yards on the ground, 1 touchdown. Bentley just 66. Rasheed Rice, with Gray being hurt, was kind of like the go-to wide receiver. 21 yards, did get a touchdown. How about Desmond Ritter? I mean, again, your boy here is touting him a whole bunch. 274 yards to 3 through the air, 46 yards and 1 touchdown on the ground, and he also had a receiving touchdown. What can't this kid do? Let's get him in the NFL. He's going to start for some team. All kidding aside, Ritter had a game. A lot of people were saying that they were going to lose, and I understand SMU is probably not one of the best teams in college right now. But they had a really good offense and they had a decent defense, and Ritter went out there, put this game on his back with that defense, and they took control. Jerome Ford had a decent day with 82 on the ground, and then the wide receivers, Tucker was really the big one. But very fast wide receiver, was doing a lot for them there. Alec Pierce as well, who's gotten a little bit of draft out here and there. We don't really think that, but 39 yards and 2. Great game for Cincinnati. I mean, we'll talk obviously a little bit more about them later in the show. I mean, they have a really good shot to go undefeated. We'll see what happens with them when it comes to the playoffs.
Not a second after the broadcast booth said that SMU was starting 2 true freshman corners, did they run a double move and score a touchdown on that opening play for Cincinnati. So Cincinnati with Oregon going down, you have to believe that it's going to be Cincinnati in the 4 spot. We need to talk about that a little bit later. All right, Matt, we appreciate it. We'll get back to you a little bit later in the show. Colin Decker, if you are like me, you rode Sam Hartman, Jakari Roberson, A.T. Perry. You rode these guys to the playoffs, and they definitely let you down today.
Yeah, Wake just really struggled to protect Hartman all game this game. You really saw Clemson's defensive front take it to him. 7 sacks, 2 fumbles, 1 pick. Held Wake to 27 points, which is their season low. They had been averaging 44.7 points per game before that. Sam Hartman, 27 for 43 for 312, a touchdown and a pick. A.T. Perry and Roberson saved their fantasy days at least, 5 for 113 and 6 for 93. No touchdowns, though. That hurts a little bit. Another big story there, Clemson's rushing attack goes wild. Mm-hmm. We kind of saw this coming a little bit. Wake is very susceptible on the ground. We saw Ty Chandler eat them up a couple weeks ago. Kobe Pace goes for 191 and 2. Will Shipley 112 and 2 as well. Also has that touchdown pass. Matt wants to talk about what can't Desmond Ritter do, what can't Will Shipley do. Another big story in this one is, are we looking at a Bo Collins breakout here? Yeah. Bo Collins goes for 4 for 137 and 1, and the connection with DJU there was just obvious. These guys played high school ball together at St. John Bosco in California. And DJU wasn't afraid to throw it up and let Collins go get it. I was looking at him all game. DJU did not have a great game, as we've come to expect pretty much all year. 247 and 1, but I was really looking at Bo Collins there for this one. We also had the Oregon and Utah game there. Utah dominated all facets.
Oregon and Utah just concluded a little while ago. Oregon suffers its second loss, and that shakes up the playoff rankings.
It absolutely does, and these two teams are potentially looking at each other again in the Pac-12 championship. Utah dominated all facets of this game here in this one. Tavian Thomas went 21 for 94 and 3. TJ Pledger, 10 for 46. He's looking like the backup there to Tavian Thomas. Brant Kethy went 5 for 118 in this one. He exploded. Cameron Rising, very quiet all night, just an efficient night of 10 for 18 for 178. Big story, though, was the special teams. They had a blocked kick and that big punt return at TD right before the half. I do not know why you even kicked that ball to him, but here we are. They shut down Oregon's rushing attack all day, too, this game. Oregon just looked lost. Travis Dye, 6 for 29. Byron Cardwell led the team, 7 for 35. Anthony Brown only had 9 rush yards on the ground. So just a poor offensive effort all around from the rushing attack there. Anthony Brown, 17 for 35 for 231 through the air. nobody really of note in the passing game. Devin Williams caught a touchdown. Chris Hudson had a huge catch there, but really quiet on the rest of the front there on this one.
All right, we're going to talk about how this playoff looks after Oregon's loss today, and should Cincinnati get in. Appreciate it, Colin. All right, Kevin Coleman, we gave you one of the most anticipated West Coast games today. Jackson Dart starting for USC, the true freshman quarterback that we were all looking forward to seeing today. But UCLA dominated this one.
Yeah, UCLA kicked USC's ass, 62-33. This kind of is a combination of USC just being awful at every facet of the game. Dorian Thompson-Robinson, 16 for 22. He had 349 yards, 4 touchdowns, 2 interceptions. He also had 46 yards rushing and 2 touchdowns rushing. So he crushed it for your C2C teams. If you're still in it, I don't know if you had Dorian Thompson-Robinson starting, but he did well. He played well today. Zach Charbonnet, 28 carries, 167 yards and a touchdown. And I was arguing with Damian about what do you see out of him, and I still question his NFL upside, but you can't question what he's been doing at UCLA. Like against Pac-12 talent, though, again, I struggle with him because I don't know how good he actually is. And I might be a little Michigan biased, as Felix knows, but yeah. I don't know. I don't know. I think he can be explosive. I don't know there. Now, UCLA receiving, Kazmir Allen had 3 receptions, 115 yards and 2 touchdowns. Kyle Phillips had 6 catches, 80 yards, and 2 touchdowns. So that looked good. Dolchitz, again, he's kind of been a disappointment this year. He had 2 catches, 75 yards, but he's been in and out of it. I don't know where we have him in the tight end rankings. As far as USC goes, Jackson Dart was trying to do a lot. He threw the ball 47 times. He had 325 yards. He did have a touchdown. He had 2 interceptions, which you kind of expect throwing the ball 47 times. They were playing from behind a lot. The defense with different game scripts there. Him and Gary Bryant Jr. had a hell of a connection. 9 receptions, 161 yards, and a touchdown. Gary Bryant Jr., he's going to be that guy. Like, I think when we talk about next year is like, hey, who can emerge from this class? What does that kind of look? I think Gary Bryant's the guy we got to talk about. The guy that I can't quit is Keontae Ingram. He's had a good year. Like, he had 17 carries, 96 yards, but then he also had 3 catches for 39 yards. So he looks pretty good out there. And from what we've seen the last few weeks from him, he's probably going to rush for over 1,000 yards. He's stayed healthy all year. He's one of the best receiving backs with Rashad White of this class. So if you're looking for like a deep guy in the 2nd, 3rd round, Keontae, depending on draft capital, I really like Keontae.
Yeah, I agree with you on Keontae Ingram. I'm probably not going to have Zach Charbonnet rostered anywhere. I don't have him rostered anywhere now.
I don't either.
But in dynasty leagues next year, I'm probably not going to roster him. I'll just wait. I'll just take Keontae Ingram. All right. And Jackson Dart had some good throws today, even though statistically he didn't light up the scoreboard. Oklahoma State and Texas Tech. Now, a couple of interesting storylines in this one. One, Texas Tech, Donovan Smith played very well last week against
TCU,
TCU. And Oklahoma State, Oklahoma State is now a 10-1 football team, and they forced Texas Tech to put up a goose egg today.
Yeah, they look dominant. If they would have choked against Iowa State, we're going to be talking about him as getting in front of Cincinnati. I mean, the Iowa State loss is bad. Iowa State's okay, but if you lose to Brock Purdy, you're pretty much done. But when you're looking at Oklahoma State, what's they done this year? Spencer Sanders, he had 19 for 37, 239 yards, 1 touchdown. He also had 6 carries and 48 yards and a touchdown. He looked okay. Jalen Warren didn't really do much, 12 carries, 37 yards. Dominic Richardson, though, he had 20 carries, 84 yards there. They spread it around a lot. Tay Martin, 7 receptions, 130 yards. Blaine Green, 3 catches, 46 yards. So it was a pretty dominant win from the defensive side. Offensively, they did just enough to kind of compete. And it looks pretty good there. Texas Tech, though, Donovan Smith was bad. 9 for 28, 83 yards, no touchdowns, no interceptions. Sarajic Thompson, I know a lot of people had him up there, 5 carries, 12 yards. Geiger, 1 carry, 10 yards. Braham Morton didn't look great either. Really nothing from the receiving. This is one of the worst offensive outputs that we saw from Texas Tech all year. They're not very good either. So, Oklahoma State, I think they are going to go to a high seed bowl game. But if they would have just beat Iowa State, we'd be talking about them being could they be ahead of Cincinnati? And I think we would be maybe mentioning that, as much as Matt doesn't want to admit that.
I watched this game too. Donovan Smith was finding one-on-one situations, throwing it up to wide receivers who were being face guarded by cornerbacks. The cornerbacks were not turning around. The wide receivers just weren't coming down with these footballs. And I mean, you kind of got to come down and help your freshman quarterback grab those. All right, Kevin, let me turn it over to you and Matt to cover all of the headlines for today's games.
Hello. Hey, Kevin. How are you?
Well, we're not going to talk for another week and a half, probably.
What? Why? What happened? I don't disagree with you on the playoffs thing. We're going to have a nice little chat about that.
After next Saturday.
I don't even really consider that a game because it's not really going to be one. But let's talk about the other team up north, and that is Sparty. They get spanked. Who wins the Heisman now that Walker has faltered?
Well, I tweeted out when Stroud was going crazy. I think Stroud and Bryce Young, it's one of those guys. And I think that it's going to depend on how the season finishes. And if Bryce and those guys go off and they beat Georgia. So if you're looking at like that schedule, I think that Bryce would get it. I think if Stroud wins the Big Ten, I think he should get it. And they're both putting up video game numbers right now. They both are playing very well. I like it's either those two guys. Walker's not going to get it now. He'll get invited, but he's not going to get there. I think it's Stroud or Young. And in my opinion, this sucks to say. I mean, I love Bryce. I don't know. Alabama's not that good. And I think Ohio State's going to win out. And I think that we always know winning is going to what matters. And so I think I'm going to lean Stroud just because I think that they're the better team.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think the winning part's going to matter. I think most Heisman votes don't have to be submitted until after the championship games, and I really think that one will matter. I think Young should get it because he's putting up numbers similar to Stroud, if not better, and he doesn't have the weapons around him. I mean, no disrespect to Jamison Williams, John Mechie, Brian Robinson. They're not JSN, Garrett Wilson, Travion Henderson, Chris Olave. I mean, the weapons that Stroud has, and don't get me wrong, he's playing amazing. That's why I submitted my apology earlier. But I think Bryce Young, because of what you just mentioned, he's putting up those video game numbers too. And let's be honest, against better competition, some of the teams that he's had to play, Arkansas beats most of the teams in the Big Ten. LSU, even in a down year, beats most of the teams in the Big Ten right now. So I think it should be Bryce Young's award, but I'm with you. If he loses to Georgia and Stroud goes out there and has a good day, he's likely going to get it. Let's continue talking about Stroud because coming into this year, not a lot of us thought that he was going to look as good as he has, and there was a lot of talk that Ewers was going to be the guy in 2022. Stroud, with the way he's played now, looks to be the future of Ohio State. So what happens with Quinn Ewers, Kyle McCord, and Jack Miller?
Yeah, this is a tough question. I think Miller is. Why did we put Miller on this list? I think he's gone.
I mean,
right?
he was a high 4-star quarterback, I guess. He's there, so.
I guess. I mean, we'll see. We'll remove Miller. I think McCord definitely transfers. I think he goes to LSU. So I think McCord may go to LSU with whatever new coach comes, and maybe that's kind of like that. I hope it's Aranda. I really want Aranda to get that job. Maybe they get a quarterback in there, and I think that would be a good fit because they need a quarterback. Ewers is an interesting one. I did see someone make the case today that he would stay, and then he would essentially just take over in 2022 after 2022 when Stroud leaves for the NFL. And I think that's a realistic scenario, maybe. I think if he was willing to stay, learn, and then jump in there, he could play for a year and he could still be a top 10 pick if he played well. I know you know more about this, but I do know that he has struggled. I have heard that Ewers is not ready yet. So we obviously need to see him develop and do those type of things. If he stays, I think he could have a good development. I don't know why he would leave. If you have all that talent around you, unless you're super uber competitive and you want to go, but where's he going to go? Texas? Texas is bad. I mean, you could say you're the savior, but what you got Xavier Worthy. You're not going to have any of the wide receivers that Ohio State has. And in 2 years, JSN might be gone, but those classes, Marvin Harrison Jr., Kojo, all these other guys that are coming in, like I would probably stay because that's going to benefit you the most.
Yeah, I mean, I think McCord and Miller are both gone. That's kind of the easy one. Ewers is definitely the interesting conversation here. I mean, there's a lot of rumors that he has been homesick and has not necessarily enjoyed being at Ohio State. With what you're talking about, him not being ready, I find it funny because Ryan Day is the one who's perpetrating that, right? Like if you listen to Ryan Day's press conferences, anytime someone asks him about Quinn Ewers, he mentions like Quinn Ewers can't even find the bathroom at the athletic facility still. Like that's what he says about the kid. But then the minute that Jack Miller gets his DUI and gets removed and Quinn Ewers is the third string quarterback, all of a sudden it's like, oh, well, he's really picked up the playbook. He's really looking good in practice. So I don't really know what's going on there. From everything I've read, he seems to be a calm, cool, collected kid, but he has to be an uber competitor as well, especially playing down here in Texas. I mean, South Lake is I live 15 minutes from South Lake. They treat South Lake High School like a college program. It's ridiculous. The homesick thing makes me think Texas, but I kind of agree with you. That's what I think I tweet, or me and Felix were talking about this in a text message thing earlier today. Texas is so bad. I don't know that you would leave and go to Texas, because if they weren't like less than whatever, I mean, they're not even 500. If they at least had like a winning record, I could see it. Hey, go in there, because a lot of people don't think Malik Murphy's ready. Get 2 years with Sark this offense. You get Bijan for 1, then Jadon Blue comes in. I don't see it. I mean, Ryan Day has been considered this quarterback guru, so I'm kind of with you. I think it's better for him to stay there, but it's going to be a very interesting storyline this entire offseason, what happens, because if McCord and Miller do leave, which we both expect, that pushes Ewers into that QB2, and then if he ends up leaving, you're going to put Ohio State in a situation they were in last year where it was oh my God, was it Gunnar Hoke, I think, was the backup to Justin Fields, so if Justin Fields goes down, you're screwed. Speaking of quarterbacks, bummer sooner. Caleb Williams. Felix talked about it a little bit here. He did not look great. I mentioned this Wednesday on Debbie Debate. I think we were a little too quick to say he's this great quarterback after a couple good games. What are your thoughts on him after him kind of struggling here the past couple weeks?
Yeah, I think he's fine. I think it's the relevant of the team. I think they need to get a better scheme going in there. I will say Lincoln Riley has not coached very well this season. So I do think he needs to get better there. I think Felix was onto something there. But realistically, I think he's still a second round super flex, probably startup. If you want to go with Caleb, I'm not drafting quarterbacks any high anymore. I'm done with that. But I would say like he's probably in that early second. I'd say he's probably, if we did startup, let's say what we think is going to be gone, he's probably QB4, right? I would say Bryce, obviously you have Bryce in there. I'm probably CJ's probably in there, right? CJ's probably QB2 right now.
I would think he'd be. I mean, he's my QB2. I just did my rankings, and those are my top 2 because I had Williams at 1. I think he's QB3 though, and I think someone's going to take him in the first round. They're going to believe. Probably. My biggest thing, I think Lincoln's leaving. And that's why I don't think he's been coaching as well. But we can save that for another time. Yeah, I just think we were a little too quick to crown him after 2 really good games coming in for what Spencer Rattler was playing poor. And all of a sudden, Oklahoma looked really good for 2 games. And everybody's like, oh, Caleb Williams, QB1. Maybe we were a little too quick on that. We have to talk about this guy because of Felix. I really don't want to. Bayland, me and you were kind of talking about this on Twitter and shooting this down. I'm assuming Felix didn't see this. Wisconsin is the land of milk and honey for RBs. Your thoughts on Braylon Allen?
Yeah, okay. So we had this conversation. I just think he's going to get overdrafted next year. I just don't want the value. I've seen this movie before, and you made a good point about this too. Like, I don't want him on my roster because to me, I don't want to say he's like, when we looked at Lloyd from South Carolina and these other guys, like they had a great year and that offensive line, like you pointed out, is good. They lean the hell on their running backs. I know Graham Mertz was supposed to be Peyton Manning. He is not. He is Ryan Leaf. And so when you're looking at kind of what's going on there with that quarterback situation, the volume is there for these guys. So they're going to be great college guys. I don't want anything to do with Berger. I'm not Berger, Braylon Allen. I don't think that he's bad. I just think that he's way too overvalued. And people are going to be drafting his ass probably at the end of the first round by like July. And I'm not going to do that.
Yeah, I think that's my biggest issue with him as well, is that he's just getting so much hype. He's going to be that guy that jumps into the first or second round. For those who don't know, he was a linebacker, transitioned to running back. He's only like 17 years old. But again, everybody's pointing out that he's gone 7 straight games of over 100 yards. Name me like a top 60 rushing
Yeah.
defense they've played in those 7 games. They have not been good. Wisconsin has one of the best offensive lines. As you mentioned, they lean on their running backs. They have to, because Graham Mertz couldn't hit the broadside of the barn. Dude falls out of a boat, doesn't even hit water. He finds a way to hit dry land in the middle of the Atlantic. It's ridiculous. They have to rely on Braylon Allen because that's all they have. I'm not going to anoint him the next Jonathan Taylor, the next best Wisconsin back, because he's had 6 good games. Did the same thing with DJ last year. Did the same thing with Caleb Williams this year. We get too quick to judge these guys after a couple good games. Let's let defenses look at him now. Granted, I'll give him the dude looks built like a shit brick house. I mean, or brick shit house, however you say that term. He is. I would be terrified if he was running at me, but I'm a little bit worried to just anoint him as a first or second round pick in C2C drafts next year. Last but not least, Oregon goes down, and we'll talk a little bit more about this later, I believe, with everybody, but just wanted to touch on the playoff race is now wide open. Oklahoma and Oklahoma State, I think, are both still in it. Because they play each other this week in Bedlam. They've got the Big 12 championship, so they still got it. And the team that Cincinnati beat in Notre Dame, I think, still has a chance to jump back in it if they continue to go undefeated. Just your really quick thoughts on that, and we'll jump into the panel discussion.
In my opinion, I think Ohio State deserves to go to 2. And so I think it should be Georgia, Ohio State, Alabama, Cincinnati. I think that's how it should look right now. I don't know if it will, but I think that's how it goes. I think Michigan will probably get to 5, which they shouldn't be at 5, but we'll get into that later. And then Notre Dame's going to pop up there too. So I do think that you're looking at, they're just going to be playing out of there. I don't want to see Notre Dame again, though. That's the one thing I don't want to see. I don't need to see them get their ass kicked again. I don't want to see Cincinnati either, but I'd rather see Cincinnati get their ass kicked instead of Notre Dame.
Agreed.
Cincinnati will lose by 50 to Georgia, Matt.
I don't think that they will. Maybe I'm buying too much into that Peach Bowl game last year, but I think they're going to put up a better game than Notre Dame has. Desmond Ritter's not going to win it for him. I will give everybody that. But that defense is a lot better than people give it credit for, and I don't think Georgia's offense is as good as we think it is. I think we're going to see how good that Georgia offense really is when they get to play Bama here in a couple weeks. But that's enough for the headlines here. Let's bring Felix and Colin back in here as we talk about the panel discussion. So Austin's not here, and Colin's the best looking guy. So let's let Colin do it.
Well, that's not true. That's not true. Colin, since Matt and Kevin just hate Braylon Allen haters, just absolute Braylon Allen haters. They don't like 6'2", 240-pound running backs who can beat defensive backs on 75-yard touchdowns. Who for you stood out in today's games?
Well, did you hear Braylon Allen's only 17 years old? Did you hear
17 years old? I mean, he should be in high school. But
so one of the guys that stood out. There's definitely a couple candidates here on this one, but one of the guys that stood out to me was Bo Collins, like I talked about a little bit earlier here. He's just really been turning it on lately. I mean, in the past 3 games, 6 for 104 and 1, 5 for 40 and 1, but that was against UConn that game. Clemson thought so little of that game that they didn't even start Will Shipley or Kobe Pace that week. And then this week, 4 for 137 and 1. We know the rest of these wide receivers in this room just really aren't it. Justin Ross injured again, disappointing all year. Joe Nada and Frank Ladson Jr. not it. Ajo. All 3 of those guys, people were touting them up this offseason. They've all fallen flat on their face. And it's been the Collins duo of Dakari and Bo, but Bo is the one who would be the biggest stock up for me.
Yeah, I was watching DJ Uiagalelei studying his last year's tape and a few games this year, including Georgia. And one thing I know, he does not like hanging on to the ball at all. And the passes that I saw from for Bo Collins today were passes where, it's 2-3 step drop and let it go. And so I don't know, maybe because Bo Collins played with him in high school, maybe allegedly they have some sort of connection. I got to highlight Milton Wright here. Milton Wright from Louisville Christian Academy of Louisville went off today. Went off for 18 yards, 3 touchdowns, 8 for 213 and 3. I have been looking at players or who are going to be my guys for 2022. And I think Milton Wright he was already on my list of guys that I was considering, and he goes off today. We've had Rondell Moore there. We've had David Bell there. And Milton Wright is absolutely the next up. He has the requisite size. He has a track background. He played quarterback in high school. This is a smart kid who is playing in an offense that can utilize his strengths in that system. I mean, when it comes to I still think that he's a little bit off the radar. He's probably someone you could get in like the 20th round of a startup next year. And if he puts up, the numbers that number one wide receiver has in the past, he's going to be a really, really good value for players in C2Cs next year.
Yeah, I mean, we've seen Purdue wide receivers produce year in and year out, multiple different ones. So why not Milton Wright as the next guy up?
Yeah, speaking of my guys, Felix, that you just talked about, I mentioned this guy's my guy segment when we did our Devy Debate show on Wednesdays, and that's Brant Kethy out of Utah, the tight end. He showed out tonight in primetime. I mean, 118 yards receiving. He had a really big block against a defensive end that set up Rising's rushing touchdown. McBride is probably the top tight end in this class right now. Dude had like a 70.4 dominator rating last year, which is just absolutely ridiculous. But I think he really can slide into the second or third tight end of this class. And no, we're not really talking about him. I mean, right now, if you just look at the dominator rating for him, Deese is sitting there at 27.5, Dolchich at 25.47, McBride this year at 25.5, Kolar 24.7, and then Kethy comes in there right there, top 5. I think he's a really good receiving tight end, but he's also a very good blocker. He's a little bit undersized at 6'2", 230, but he's, I think, a tight end, or the way the NFL is shifting towards some of these tight ends, I think he could get a little bit better draft capital than people think, and end up being one of those guys who produces maybe not year 1, but year 2 that you could get as a steal in your rookie draft. So he's a guy that I think is stock up. And we don't really talk a lot about tight ends. It's usually quarterbacks, right, running backs, and wide receivers. But, tight ends are people too. And I think he could be interesting for the NFL.
And they're necessary. I mean, you need to have an advantage at that position. I started Elijah Arroyo in one league all year because I did not have a better tight end. Elijah Arroyo had like 5 catches on the season. Kevin, anybody who stock up or stock down for you today in C2Cs?
Yeah, well, first I'll say Bo Collins is one of my guys too. I really like him. And to Colin's point is I looked at Clemson's recruiting class recently, and they don't have no wide receivers yet, like coming in. So they have a couple that are pretty close, but I'm a big on there. Now the guy I'm going to shout out is a guy that's leading me to the championship today of the program, and that's my boy Lou Nichols, the third. And it happened a while ago, but that dude's just been balling. And I mean, he's probably ran for almost 100 carries almost the last 3 games. So he definitely is pretty close. But over 1,500 yards rushing, 14 touchdowns. He also has 261 yards, receiving. But this week against Ball State, 219 yards and 3 touchdowns. And he scored 11 touchdowns the last 4 games. So the kid is good. He could actually come out this year. He's 5'10", 220. He's big. I'd rather have him than Braylon Allen.
I want to talk about Jordan Addison. That's crazy.
I'm just joking. I'm not you.
There,
who
Kevin,
told me who did you say was better than Zach Evans at one time?
I'm just what? I'm like, what did he just say?
Brandon Thomas. Brandon Thomas out of Memphis, better than Zach Evans. Really quick, Felix, before we talk about Jordan Addison, I want to ask Kevin, if he doesn't come out, where do you think Nichols goes in C2C drafts this year, or in startups?
Too high. It's going to be the same thing as like that ADP value bump. But I think he'll probably go around 8 to 10 in that area, probably.
That's what we said on Devy Debate. So I was curious if you agreed with that.
That's probably where I'd put him.
Jordan Addison, 200-yard receiving today, 3 touchdowns. He absolutely killed me today in a league where I'm scared to even look at the score because I don't want to see how poorly I lost by to Mike Bainbridge, so I have not looked at that score all day. He started both Jordan Addison and he had the Addison Pickett stack. We've known about Jordan Addison for a while. Brian Chakotis Dynasty Tools on Twitter, he was one of his favorites when he was a freshman. Addison came in as a safety, I believe, and switched to wide receiver athlete designation. this is the problem that I've always had with Jordan Addison is I do not know what his calling card is. Is it his speed? I don't think so. Is he a contested catcher? No, I don't think so. Is he some particularly twitchy wide receiver? I don't think so. I know that he's been productive, but what makes me feel all warm and fuzzy about scouting a player is when I can say, all right, this is the thing that they can do that they can take from college to the NFL. With Ramondre Stevenson, he had excellent hands. He's a dump truck. He can win with a looseness. Somebody like we're talking about wide receivers. Somebody like Garrett Wilson, very, very twitchy. Same thing for Jalen Tolbert. I'm like, okay, this is something that they can take from college to the NFL. I don't know what tools, and that it's not to say that he doesn't have them. It's just that when I watch Jordan Addison, I don't necessarily see what his calling card is. Do you all see something different with his game?
Well, I mean, I agree with you. I don't know what he does well, except for he produces. So it's weird when you watch him play. You're like, hey, he gets open, but is he a very good route runner? I don't know. Jarek Backus told me route running is overrated. So now I'm worried about my life because he ruined my scouting. And then you have he can catch though. I think the one thing that you watch, and he has great hands. And he can go up and get it. I do think he loses focus sometimes, especially on his routes. When I watch him, sometimes you can see him kind of go away. He's pretty creative though on broken plays. They do that a lot. Pitt does, and especially Pickett's ability to escape the pocket. So I do think he thinks the game pretty well. I don't know. I'd rather have Quentin Johnson, wouldn't you?
Yeah, oh, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, Quentin Johnston he can do the contested catches. He's 6'4", and he's not just a contested catcher. He can actually run out after the catch, which is something that you do not see with wide receivers of that size. It can beat you deep. I mean, it's no question for me.
I just asked that because I see people touting Addison now as like wide receiver 3. Why? And I'm just like, listen, let's chill. Like, I mean, he can produce in a great offense, but I'm out on that. I just don't see that. I think Quentin Johnson is way better than that.
I agree with that because I can see what tools Johnston has that will translate to the NFL. Let's talk a little bit about, and Colin, I want to ask you this question. Caleb Williams, CJ Stroud. There's something about CJ Stroud that is boring when he's throwing these screens behind the line of scrimmage, when he's throwing to wide receivers that have no one around him. He's not a player that runs the ball. He's like not sexy at all. I mean, he is like Kirk Cousins, it feels like. I mean, that level of sex appeal. That aside, aesthetics aside, who is the quarterback that you would rather have right now? Is it the Caleb Williams who's on a 2-week cold streak but has, some of these more sexier tools? Or is it CJ Stroud who all he does is just put up numbers in Ryan Day's system?
So I think these guys are both very, very similar right now in that you're hanging a lot of their value on their college production.
That was Austin.
Yeah, sorry. So you're hanging a lot of their value on their college production. Now, CJ Stroud's doing it all through the air. Caleb Williams is doing a lot of it through the ground, except for these past 2 weeks. I don't feel great about their prospects moving to the NFL right now. So I think these guys are both candidates going to be overdrafted here in this upcoming year. Now, if you make me pick between one or the other, I think I'm going to go with CJ Stroud. I like him better as a passer. He does also bring an element with his legs as well. We haven't really seen it much this year, but we saw it last year on that long touchdown run. So we know he can do it. Yeah. So I would take CJ Stroud there in this one. But again, I think I don't feel great about either of them projecting to the NFL right now, despite them coming from big programs, and they'll both get good draft capital.
Yeah, I agree. What? Sorry.
I was just going to say, if I had to compare them to stocks, I would say neither one of these guys have reached the level of being blue chip stocks. Like we're still, we're not putting all of our eggs, I think, in either of these baskets. As good as CJ Stroud has been, and as good as Caleb Williams was in the middle of the season, I still think, we're still in a wait and see mode with these guys. And so all that means is we're not, if we have the 1 through 5 in Campus to Canton startups next year, we're not drafting these guys. Now we might take them in the second or third round, but all that means is we're going to go with some players who have kind of established a better track record. Go ahead, man. I'm sorry.
No, you're good. So I would say I agree with Colin. I think it's actually CJ Stroud fairly easily for me. And I take him over Caleb Williams because Ryan Day, I think, over the past couple years has proved he's a little bit better offensively than Lincoln Riley. And I don't think that's unfair to say with what we've seen, especially this year with CJ. I mean, look at what CJ was earlier in the season and how he's developed him. We never saw that kind of arc from Spencer Rattler or Caleb Williams, so I think it's fair to say both of those were higher rated than C.J. Stroud. And look at the way C.J. Stroud's developed. On top of that, you expect him then to continue producing again next year like he is this year. Looking at the 2023 class, who's going to jump him? Maybe Anthony Richardson. There's a lot of rumors now that he may transfer. He's got the athletic upside. I see you shaking your head, Colin. But he's got the athletic upside. If he can throw a little bit, goes to a system that helps him out. Realistically, you're looking at that, so he's going to get some kind of NFL draft capital. You're talking about the 2023 draft class. And you got Bryce Young, C.J. Stroud. The 2024 class, like Caleb Williams sits at the top right now, but you got Quinn Ewers, Tyler Buckner, Jackson Dart, Drake May. I still think Kyle McCord is going to be good. J.J. McCarthy. Ty Thompson. You've got a lot of quarterbacks who we have not seen really play yet that I think could easily jump Caleb Williams. Yeah, Sam Heward. There's a lot of quarterbacks I think could easily jump Caleb Williams next year if they go out there and start playing well. So I think I'd bet on C.J. Stroud because of that. And I think the production you'll get next year and the more than likely top-end draft capital compared to we've seen Caleb Williams had 2 good games, 2 bad games. Is he this year's DJU? I think there's a realistic shot that he is.
Wow. I don't know.
That Stroud is or that Williams is?
That Williams is. I think we were so quick to rate DJU so highly because of what he did realistically in one game. It was against Notre Dame because he wasn't that good. It was a Pitt, I think, right? He was okay in that Pitt game. He was not great. He was good against Notre Dame. And the same thing with Caleb Williams. He had 2 good games. He has not looked that good. And I know he had his hand stepped on, but that he was playing poorly before he had his hand stepped on and got pulled out of the game and then came back in. Like, he is not looking. Now, if he goes out there next week in Bedlam and lights it up and does so again in the Big 12 championship game, I will retract that statement. But I think we were.
I don't want to raise red flags here. I mean, Caleb Williams has Lincoln Riley behind him. There's a school that has developed quarterbacks as good as Clemson has been. It seems like those guys. I don't know how much development that they've done with their QBs. I mean, Lincoln Riley had a transfer, a walk-on that he turned into a number 1 pick. So, all right. Anything else there? Anything else before we check in on the games that might still be going on?
I think we got this comment in the chat a couple times, and I definitely think it's something worth bringing up. Is Donovan Edwards, his massive receiving day, 10 catches, 100 yards.
What? I mean, that went straight past me. Wow.
Yeah, 10 catches for 100 yards. I mean, he only had a couple of carries there, but one of the things that he really hung his hat on as a recruit was his receiving ability. I believe 24/7 comped him to Alvin Kamara. So, Hassan Haskins likely gone after this year. They're going to need somebody else in there with Blake Corum. I think he could have a really nice year next year.
Yeah, and I love to see it because I was shit on all season about having him so highly as one of our freshmen.
Not by me, man.
By who?
I know. I didn't say by you.
Not by me.
Everybody else was like, I don't know that you were, Felix. I'll give you that. I don't think that you were, but I'm almost positive Colin wasn't that high on him. Austin wasn't that high on him. I even brought up, because I think it was Alan True who wrote it up as well. I was like, I don't know that I see Kamara out of him, but that's who he comps him to, and I trust Alan. And everybody else was like, no shot. Donovan Edwards, not that good. Hashtag not good at football.
Matt loves to play the victim here. I don't recall ever saying Donovan Edwards was bad.
He does.
I'm pretty sure I had him as my RB like
I will
5
happily
or 6 in this
go
class.
look that up tonight before I go to bed.
Please
because
pull those receipts.
I've sent Felix and Austin some receipts in our text message threads about some shit. Trust me, I keep them. All I gotta do is go to my notes thread and find out where some people said something. I'll pull it
if
for
you can.
you.
If you can find it on me, if you can find it on me saying that, please pull it up. Please pull the receipts. You're gonna be looking.
It was probably Austin. This whole time I'm trashing you, and it was probably Austin.
Austin doesn't like any prospect.
Austin doesn't like anybody.
Except for money. That's what he likes. Austin likes money. All right. Donovan Edwards, West Bloomfield High School. That's where I'll be at for Thanksgiving. West Bloomfield High School stand up. All right, let's turn it over to Colin and Kevin for the Left Coast check-in.
Kevin, we got a couple games going on out here right now. The LSU UL Monroe one's just about to wrap up, but how are these other games looking out there?
Yeah, so UNL, Monroe, and LSU. So LSU just won 27-14. Just talk about it real quick. Max Johnson, 2 touchdowns, 319 yards. He looked great against UL Monroe. Congratulations, Max Johnson. And then, hey, Tyron Davis-Price. We had a Tyron Davis-Price sighting, 21 carries, 82 yards there. Receiving-wise, Malik Neighbors, 4 catches, 143 yards and a touchdown. Brian Thomas Jr., 4 catches, 61 yards and a touchdown. So you've seen some good things there. I don't think Trey Palmer is going to be good, Colin. I think I'm off the Trey Palmer train finally. 1 catch, 7 yards, baby. All right. I'm not going to talk about the other side. They won. They lost. There's no one over there. There's no one over there worth mentioning on that side. I do know that New Mexico State just finished this game as a blowout against Boise State. Boise State won 37-0. Khalil Shakur, senior night, 7 catches, 116 yards and a touchdown. He continues to be a value. I have him in most of my C2C leagues. He's just been producing. If he doesn't get 15 points, he has a very safe floor. It's usually just a terrible game. He looked great. Holani had 14 carries, 114 yards. I shit on Holani 6 weeks ago. And ever since then, he's slowly been waking up a little bit, but he's still not a Debbie asset. But it'll be interesting to see if he comes back next year. Hank Bachmeier did okay. 1 touchdown, 1 interceptions there. New Mexico might be the worst team I've ever seen. They had 18 yards passing, and other than that, there was nothing to tie. New Mexico's not very good. Probably going to be part of the new Conference USA pretty soon. All right, Arizona State is playing Oregon right now. Oregon State is down 17-0 to Oregon State. Herman Edwards this tenure might be coming to an end. I don't know if necessarily they should have been way better this year. Jaden Daniels 8 for 14, 90 yards, and interception. And he has 38 yards rushing. But to be honest about Jaden Daniels, I expected more from him this year, and he just has not produced. And I think that's one of the biggest what ifs because he was so talented his freshman year, just hasn't gone out of there. Rushing wise, Rashad White, 11 carries, 36 yards, hasn't looked great. Tramon's there, 3 carries, 11 yards. Jaden Daniels, 6 carries, 38 yards, pretty much there. They really had nothing there. Rashad White has had 4 catches, 69 yards in the receiving game. So on that side, you like that. I think he is one of the best receiving backs in college football. Him and Keontae Ingram, I think both of those guys are there. And then Oregon State, they're just kind of winning this game based on their defense is holding Arizona State down. Chance Nolan, 66 yards, a touchdown. BJ Baylor has 14 carries, 89 yards. But a lot of these guys, they play for Oregon State. I don't know how many. Do you have any rostered Oregon State players, Colin?
Just BJ Baylor, and he was just a waiver ad.
Yeah. So, not the greatest there. And then the last game of the night that we got going on right now is Colorado State versus Hawaii. Hawaii's winning 22-10. And you know what? Shavon Cordero came back. He's looked great. 15 for 24, 248 yards and a touchdown. And he also has 47 yards rushing and a touchdown. And Cordero is one of those guys I really like, and I always tout him there. Zion Bowens, 5 catches, 168 yards, a touchdown. Calvin Turner Jr. has not had a great game. 4 catches, 22 yards. On the other side, Colorado State, Todd Centillo, 10 for 18, 156 yards and a touchdown. Cameron Butler had a big catch, 1 catch, 69 and a touchdown. Trey McBride has kept 1 catch to 12 yards. So big Trey McBride, some people's tight end 1, not having a great game. He's definitely hurting some C2C people out there because they probably needed him to have a good game.
Yeah, really the only guys at Colorado State you're relying on, Trey McBride and David Bailey. And
Yeah.
hopefully you weren't riding either of them tonight. I know you mentioned Shakir having a big day. I just want to ask you real quick here. You said he's been consistent all year. He definitely has been. He's likely to come out, I believe, this year. Did he already say he was coming out? Was he one of the ones that announced?
I think
sure.
I don't know. I'm pretty sure it's like a foregone conclusion. He celebrated senior night tonight. Right. He has to come out, because, I mean, he's already hit that age. He's I think he's 21, going on 22, pretty close. Like, he's been there for a while. Yeah. I thought he was going to come out last year.
Yeah, and I know he is in the Senior Bowl, but there's the weird COVID year too, so it's hard to say who's coming out, who's not. If he does come out this year, what kind of draft capital do you think he's looking at?
He's a tough one. I do like him. I do like where he goes he plays on the outside. And I think he can play in the middle of the slot. I think he can play inside, outside, and be that guy. I think he's going to be a slot receiver in the NFL. I get worried about drafting guys like that. You know what? I think his ceiling is the third round. I think if he get drafted in the third round, that would be like, wow, pretty good. I still think he might be a fourth round guy. It just depends on I think it just depends on the testing numbers. I think his testing numbers are going to be completely important.
Yeah, I would definitely agree with that. I like his versatility too. So I think he can be a fancy asset at the next level, but what his ceiling is there, I'm not entirely sure.
It's his last game.
Yep, we got some confirmation. He said it's his last game. Matt's also in the chat here saying if you go to the Senior Bowl, you do have to leave college. So that is good to know on that front.
All right, this is where we go to catch all, since Colin wasn't throwing us to that. The game is this week. I'll throw it to these Michigan fans who probably think they've got a shot in this game. Kevin, how does Michigan beat the Ohio State this weekend?
Okay, listen here. Okay, I don't necessarily think they're going to win, but if I had to create a game plan, it would basically they need to lean on their rushing attack, and they have to keep that offense off the field. They have to keep Ohio State's offense from exploding. And they've got to keep that game dirty in the 20s, and they got to score at least 30 points, I would say, 31-24. Hope that CJ Stroud throws a couple interceptions. You know who the key is going to be is Henderson. Henderson's going to be the key. Can we stop him and then make sure to do that? Our corners are not very good. It's going to be a struggle. I don't think we have a shot, but if we create turnovers, that's fine. I know our defense has looked good this year. Ohio State's just on a different level. They always have been. So as much as I hate Ohio State, it's going to be a very tough game.
I mean, Michigan did just put up, what was it, 59, 56?
Against Maryland.
Against Maryland.
It's Maryland. I mean, that's fine. But I don't know. I think that our lack of weapons on the outside, it'd be nice if we had Xavier Worthy, but if we don't, so if we could have those weapons and do those things, I think we could compete with them. But I just don't see us competing.
Kevin, this can happen. All right. So it reminds me of that New England Patriots team that took on the New York Giants. The way that you beat a team like this is your defensive line has to dominate with 4. Your defensive line has to dominate with 4, and they've got the guys the horses to do it. Aiden Hutchinson is allegedly a top 10 draft pick. Their defensive line has been one of the highest graded defensive lines according to Pro Football Focus. If they can rush with 4 and commit the rest of their guys to coverage, because you have to cover those. I mean, they've got 3 guys who might be taken in the first round between Olave, Wilson, and Jackson Smith and Jigba.
Yeah.
Then you can win. Then you can win because you just changed the math on defense. You have to be able to put pressure, and preferably put pressure right up the middle on CJ Stroud without blitzing. Then you can win. If they can't do that, if he's getting 5, 6, 7 seconds to throw the ball, it's going to be a long, long day. If Michigan is going to pull this one off, and it's at the Big House. That's how they're going to win.
Yep, I agree. I think it's, I feel like I've been saying this every single week and it's not happened, but I actually think this could be a closer game. I'm curious to see what the line drops at. I don't know that it'll drop until like Monday. But Hutchinson and who's the other defensive end that you guys have that, I mean, they're both very good. I can't think of what his name is off the top of my head right now. But the Buckeyes just lost Harry Miller. He's gone off that offensive line. The one thing I'll say about Stroud, we have not seen him get pressured in weeks. The last time we saw him really get pressured was back in the Oregon and Tulsa games, and we saw that the kind of quarterback he was then, he forced throws and made turnovers, like you were just talking about, Kevin. That's what that team needs to do. So I do think if they can get to him and pressure him a little bit and force him to make mistakes, that it could be a very good game. I mean, if they keep running the ball and keep that offense off the field, I agree with you. But the difference will be, can they get those quick strikes like they did against Michigan State today? Because that will be the big thing. I think that game really turned when Michigan State had that fumbled and they were able to throw the one pass to Garrett Wilson for like a 60-yard touchdown and put him up 21-0. I think that's kind of what effectively ended that. If Michigan can kind of answer them early on and then cause some issues for CJ Stroud, I do think that they have a chance to win the game. And I do think it's going to be a very good one. They typically play each other close. We don't really get these 56-something blowouts we had a couple years ago. For all the crap I like to give Jim Harbaugh, he seems to keep these games fairly close, which is probably why
I think for the record,
right?
I think that Michigan still has the overall winning record on the.
They do.
They do on the.
There's no way we're gonna win, guys.
So
6. Is it 6?
Yeah.
It's technically 7 in the record book, since whatever season doesn't count for Ohio State now because of Tattoo Gate or whatever when they won. But so I think it's technically 7 in the record books, but whatever. All right, Cincinnati's playoff outlook.
Thanks
Kevin
for not coming to
this.
me, by the way, about that. I hate both of those teams. I didn't want to talk about either of them.
I know. That's why I didn't really care to
No,
get
I
your
appreciate
opinion on it. The Penn State
facts
fan.
about Ohio State: one of the most polluted states in the continental United States, the most obese state in the United States, and one of the ugliest states in the United States. So,
comments. Any comments? Would you like to add anything while we're here?
Nope.
No? All right, cool. Cincinnati, the playoff outlook. Kevin and I talked about this earlier. Still believe Oklahoma State, and Notre Dame are still in this. Some believe Alabama will be, even if they lose to Georgia, if it's a close game. Cincinnati likely is going to go undefeated. They get East Carolina in rivalry week here in week 13. Then they do get Houston in the AAC championship game, likely. Houston undefeated and has looked decent at times. Colin, I'll come to you first here. What are your thoughts about Cincinnati and their playoff outlook?
Well, you like to hype up as the biggest Cincinnati fan here, but back in May, I put a bet on them to make the playoff and win the national title. So I am also on the Cincinnati bandwagon. I like this team a lot. They were really scrappy last year. They did not lose very many pieces. They took that Georgia team to the wire with JT Daniels at quarterback, who I still believe is a better quarterback than Stetson Bennett, despite what we saw this year. So I like Cincinnati a lot. I think, with Oregon going down today, they control their own destiny, I think. So you got to get through the East Carolina or Houston's probably going to be Houston, but if they can do that, I think they're in.
All right, Felix, any thoughts on this since me and Kevin talked about it before we go to preview week 13?
Yeah, I my question is would I rather see Oklahoma? Oklahoma's not going to get in the playoff. Does Cincinnati have a shot? They're going to be playing Georgia. I just want to see a good game. I don't want to see blowouts in the playoff, but quite frankly, if we're going to see a team like, for example, UTSA get into the playoff, well then in some subsequent year, because it's not going to happen this year, then we need to let Cincinnati in now. But for one of these G5 teams to really have credibility, we pretty much have to see a G5 team not only get in it, but then win the championship so that people can stop questioning it in the future. And it's not going to happen this year. Like this year, they're going to get steamrolled by Georgia. And so it's really unfortunate. I think that some of those old Boise State teams could have made a game, but I don't know that this particular Cincinnati team is the one to do it. So,
yeah, I mean, they're not as good as last year's team. I'll say that, but why do we just overlook the Peach Bowl game last year where Georgia had a better team And I know that they gave the same old spiel that they didn't really care or whatever, and they didn't turn it on until the second half. But Cincinnati still hung with them and had a chance to win that game. I don't think Cincinnati gets blown out. I'm not saying Cincinnati would beat Georgia, but I don't think that they would lose 50-something to 10 like Notre Dame has to Alabama the past couple times they've got in. I think they could keep it to like a 10-14 game, and that's a game. It may not be Cincinnati wins it, but I think they could keep it a game.
I think you're missing the point that they didn't have QB1 Stetson Bennett on their roster. They didn't start him last year, and he's looked better than JT Daniels. I mean, if you're going to be honest, and I think that rushing attack is better this year. I think they're deeper, and so I think they're just going to run it down Cincinnati's throat. And if George Pickens comes back, then we're going to be talking about something a little different.
Yeah, I don't think Cincy gets blown out, but I do think if they get Georgia that they would get beat. It's probably like a 2-score game, maybe.
Right,
so 10-14. That's not a bad game, though. That's better than what we've gotten in that first round.
10-14 is not 2-score.
Yeah, it is 7
you're
points
saying,
and 3.
You're saying they lose.
How is that
by
not 2 scores?
I thought you were saying
I'm saying they lose by 10 to 14 points. So 2 scores, a field goal, and a touchdown.
I got
last I counted. I could be wrong there, but I'm just saying. I think all right. Well, enough arguing about Cincinnati. We've got plenty of time for that. Colin and Kevin, thank you guys so much for joining us today. I guess it's me and Felix now to give you guys a preview of Week 13.
Yeah, we're going to wrap up here. Matt, we talked about the game. Rivalry week. Ole Miss at Mississippi State. Thursday, Ole Miss at Mississippi State. Friday is a loaded slate of games after Thanksgiving. You can just turn on the TV and watch college football all day. The Iron Bowl, Ohio State at Michigan. I mean, it's going to be an exciting week next week. And I love this time of year for college football because I actually get to go rewatch games and target specific players. What are you looking forward to next week?
I mean, the game that I'm most looking forward to is probably Bedlam because I still don't think Oklahoma and Oklahoma State are out of it right now. And if Oklahoma State or Oklahoma wins, they likely will get a chance to rematch each other in the Big 12 championship game. And if they win both those games, we've seen the committee does not want to put Cincinnati in. I think that gives one of those teams the edge, especially Oklahoma State. I know they had the bad loss to Iowa State, but if they're able to beat Oklahoma twice, that's a major feather in your cap because although Oklahoma hasn't played that well, they're still considered a high-end program. So I'm looking forward to that game. That offense, can Lincoln Riley get Caleb Williams and that offense humming against one of the better defenses in the Big 12?
Yeah, I mean, I'm looking forward to it too. Mike Gundy, you got to give him credit for what he's been able to do without Chuba Hubbard, without the wide receiver who got drafted by the Ravens, whose name always escapes me. And they've looked okay. I do not like what they're doing with Brennan Presley, effectively turning him into a part-time punt returner. But that running game is firing on all cylinders. That is going to be it for us. Make sure that you tune in next week. We are coming to the close of the season, probably just have a few shows left, but you are going to want to join us next week as we take you from coast to coast.